Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel, guys. So what I have for you guys today we are going to be counting down what have been, in my opinion, the best championship signings so far in this transfer window. So of course, at the moment we have just over 2 weeks left of this transfer window, and in the championship so far there have been some pretty massive signings. So for this video I've gone ahead and compiled a starting 11 for what have been, in my opinion, the best 11 signings so far in this championship season. So of course, what I'm very interested to know from you guys is, first of all, which club would you say in the championship has done the best transfer business so far? How well has your team done in the transfer market, and who has been your best signing so far? And as well as that, do you agree with my starting 11 who have been, in my opinion, the best 11 signings so far? In terms of my starting 11, we'll go through it from goalkeeper to forwards. I've gone ahead and set my team up in a 3-5-2 formation to go ahead and fit in all the players I wanted to go ahead and get in there. It's also worth saying that before we actually get into this team, I decided to go ahead and just include permanent signings, so I've not included loan signings in this team. So this is just going to be permanent signings. So coming in as our goalkeeper into this team, we are going to have Sam Johnson, who of course moved from Manchester United to West Brom in this transfer window for a fee of 6.5 million, so definitely not a cheap signing, this one. But in my opinion, he will play a crucial role for West Brom in this upcoming season. Obviously, only being 25 years of age, he's of course going to be replacing Ben Foster, who over the course of his career at West Brom, he had a very good time there. However, as Sam Johnson is 10 years younger than Foster, I think he's going to be a very good replacement indeed. Of course, last season playing for Aston Villa, they only went ahead and conceded 42 goals that season, and only Wolves and Cardiff went ahead and conceded less goals. I think it was important that a player like Sam Johnson actually got a permanent move away from Man United, because before he completed this deal, he had been loaned out 10 times by them. So it was about time that he finds a permanent club to go to, and I think that he will fit into West Brom quite well. His distribution and his shot stopping, and his age only being 25, which is, very young for a goalkeeper who tend to play into their late 30s. This will be a very good signing in my opinion for West Brom, and in my opinion has been the best goalkeeper to sign for a club in this transfer window. Then, like I said, our team is playing as a 3-5-2, so coming in as our first centre-back is going to be Aiden Flint, who of course has moved from Bristol City to Middlesbrough in this transfer window, and standing at 6'6" and going into a Tony Pulis team this season, he's going to cause absolute havoc going into this season in the Championship. Over his last 4 seasons with Bristol City, he's gone ahead and scored 36 goals as a centre-back. So could you imagine the damage he's going to do in a Tony Pulis set-piece team when he's going up for those corners? Defensively, of course, he is a very capable defender in the Championship, and I think he will fit a Tony Pulis side like Middlesbrough like a glove, really. Of course, it still wasn't cheap either. He did cost £8 million in the end, but overall I think that this will be a good signing for Middlesbrough. Defensively, I'd argue that Middlesbrough are looking very strong at the moment. What was quite interesting as well is Wolves being heavily linked with the move for Adama Traore at the moment. I feel like creativity is where Middlesbrough are going to struggle this year, but defensively they are looking very strong. And giving into partner Aiden Flint at the back, we are going to have Kyle Bartley, of course, another player moving to West Brom in this transfer window, of course, moving from Swansea City to West Brom. The fee in the end, I believe it was undisclosed, but I believe it was in the region of about 4.5 million. And once again, West Brom, quite similar to Middlesbrough as well. Defensively, I think they are going to be set up very well going into this season. If you imagine they'll have a defensive pairing of Kyle Bartley and Hegazi with Gibbs and Dawson as fullbacks, and then you've got Sam Johnson in behind them, I don't see West Brom conceding a lot of goals going into this season. It's just going forward where I think that perhaps they may struggle a little bit. I still think that they need to refine a couple of areas going forward if they are really going to challenge this season, especially with some of the players who have been linked away from West Brom. But defensively, I think they are going to be very solid this season. Kyle Bartley, a very good defender in the Championship. He showed that from his time at Leeds a couple seasons ago, and he will fit into that West Brom side quite well, really. So he comes in as our next player into this team. And then to go ahead and complete our back three, this one was a bit of a toss-up in my opinion between John Egan signing for Sheffield United and Adam Webster signing for Bristol City. In the end, I decided to go ahead and give it to John Egan, simply for the fact that Webster struggled with injuries over his past few seasons with Ipswich, but I decided to include John Egan into this team. I think that for Sheffield United, he'll be a very good signing coming into this season. With Sheffield United liking to play with 3 at the back, it's important that their centre-backs are comfortable on the ball. I think that Egan brings that sense of stability into that back line. You know, if you imagine the back three that they're going to have of Egan, O'Connell and Chris Basham going into this season, Sheffield United are looking really strong going into this year. So I'm excited to see what Chris Wilder's men can bring going into this year, of course. This one was a fairly expensive deal as well, of course. It was a record signing for Sheffield United, costing them around about £4 million in the end, but I think this was a solid sign for them. It probably fit both sides as well. You know, Sheffield United were in need of strengthening their back line, and Brentford have got players to step in and replace Egan already at the club. So I feel like this transfer did fit both parties really, but Egan, I think he can do well with Sheffield United this season. He goes ahead and completes the back three. Then moving on into the midfield of this team, the first player coming in is going to be Ryan Ledson, moving from Oxford United to Preston North End. I truly believe that this will be an exceptional signing for Preston going into this season and then for future seasons to come. At only 20 years old, he really goes ahead and fits into the club ethos and is just the sort of player who Alex Neil really does like. He's an energetic midfielder who's comfortable on the ball and can drive forward, score a couple of long-ranging efforts. If you look at his international career at England youth level as well, I think he has a certain maturity for a player who is only 20 years old. He went ahead and captained the England under-17s when they went ahead and won the European Championships in 2014. So he's a player who can lead from the front from such a young age, and as well as that, I think it's fair to say from looking at some of his tackles over his career, I think he'll fit in pretty well next to Ben Pearson this season.
Whipple working hard, that's a late challenge that.
Ja, hier, hij is hier.
So Ryan Ledson is the first midfielder coming into this side. And then coming into partner Ledson in the midfield, we have Peter Etebo signing for Stoke City. This transfer actually happened quite a while ago before the World Cup. He of course featured in the World Cup playing for Nigeria and had a very successful one. You know, whenever I watched Nigeria play, I was looking out for Etebo as he will be playing in the Championship this season. And I've got to say, he had a very impressive time. One stat that is worth mentioning about Etebo is only Neymar and Messi completed more take-ons in the group stages of the World Cup than Etebo. He managed 16 in his 3 group games for Nigeria, and he can play as quite a diverse midfielder, can play as a defensive player, can play as a more attacking player, likes to play quite box to box, or can even play as a wide player. And I think that him partnering Joe Allen this season, Stoke City have got a really good midfield going into this year. He did cost around about £6 million, so it was a fairly expensive signing, but there was Premier League interest in Etebo, and Stoke have made a fantastic capture there. Then coming in on the right hand side for this team, we are going to have Ben Marshall signing for Norwich City from Wolves in this transfer window. I'm quite intrigued to see what role he's actually going to play for Norwich this season. I'd imagine they're going to set up with a 3 at the back system, so that's probably going to mean that we're going to see Marshall playing as a wing back in Daniel Farke's system, which I think he'll be more than capable of doing. Last season he was playing for Millwall on loan for the second half of that season. In that time managed to go ahead and score 3 goals and pick up 5 assists in 16 appearances for them, and Millwall, I think their fans in general were pretty good that they didn't get Ben Marshall back. You know, they're lacking a wide player at the moment, and this was just the sort of player who Norwich were in need of. Obviously after losing players like James Madison and Josh Murphy, they're going to need creativity to come back to this team, and with his work ethic out on that right hand side, this will be a good capture for Norwich. Then coming in on the left hand side, we're going to have Josephoon signing for Derby County from Brentford, and one thing that Derby probably were lacking a little bit last season was pace going forward, especially from the flanks. They've added that this season in Josephoon. In my opinion, he is probably an upgrade on Vyman, who of course has moved to Bristol City in this transfer window. Derby being fairly busy as well with signing some loan players in this window as well, but the player I'm going to include is Josephoon. Last season for Brentford, he went ahead and scored 7 goals and picked up 7 assists as well. I think that his role in this Frank Lampard side, I'm quite interested to see what's going to happen. It's looking like Lampard's going to be lining up Derby with a 4-3-3 this season, so that's probably going to give players like Josephoon playing out on the left or on the right if he chooses to do so quite a bit of freedom to go ahead and express himself and break on the counter going forward. So Josephoon, definitely a player I'm looking forward to seeing under Lampard this season. Then coming in as our attacking midfielder in this side, we're going to have João Carvalho signing for Nottingham Forest this season, coming over from Benfica. Now, it's been well documented this season that Nottingham Forest have been doing a lot of business, and one of the players coming over from Portugal who I am most excited to see this season is going to be João Carvalho. Now, he can either play as a winger or as a central attacking midfielder, playing it as that creative role. I get the impression that he's going to play there with Goncalves on the left and then Diaz on the right. Those 3 playing in behind Groban this season, we could be seeing an absolute goal fest at Nottingham Forest this season, and I'm interested to see how this Aitor Karanka side will actually function this season. You know, typically when you imagine an Aitor Karanka side, they are usually quite defensive, but this team for Nottingham Forest is looking quite top heavy at the moment, performance. So if they do manage to get the best out of a player like Carvalho, he could be an absolute star for them this season. He wasn't cheap. He signed for around about £14 million coming over from Benfica, but if he does hit it off in the Championship with the quality that I've seen he's got, he will be an exceptional capture for them. And beginning as our first striker into this team, we are going to have Benicophobe moving from Wolves to Stoke. Now, there was quite a lot of drama around this transfer, and technically he is actually a loan player for the first half of this season, but Stoke do have the obligation to go ahead and buy him in January, so realistically he is a Stoke player, so I am going to include him into this list. Of course, the controversy was that Wolves only signed him in this transfer window, and then only a matter of days went by when Stoke were interested, and then he went ahead and made the switch to Stoke. But in the Championship, I think that if you do get the right system playing around Benicophobe, he can be a clinical goal scorer. In the second half of last season for Wolves, in 16 appearances, he managed to go ahead and score 6 goals for them, most of his appearances coming from the bench as well. And with some of the players who Stoke are going to have playing behind Benicophobe this season, I think that he is going to be in contention for the Golden Boot. I think the fee in the end was around about £12 million, but that's the sort of going rate for a top Championship goal scorer. So Benicophobe, he is the first striker coming into this side. And then coming into partner Benicophobe, we are going to have Lewis Groban, another signing for Nottingham Forest this season. And what's interesting is actually the two strikers who are going ahead and selected for this team are currently both the favourites for the Championship top scorer going into this season. Last season, Lewis Groban had 2 loan spells, one at Sunderland and one at Aston Villa. In that time, he managed to go ahead and score 20 goals that season, and when you consider that 12 of them came at Sunderland, where the service was pretty abysmal, Lewis Groban really could hit it off this season for Nottingham Forest. You know, with that 3 in behind of Goncalves, Carvalho and Diaz, the service into Groban you'd expect is going to be top notch for the Championship. And you just get that impression that he's going to bag them in for fun this season for Forest. The fee in the end, I believe, was around about £6 million, but for a player of Lewis Groban's quality, I think it probably will be a good deal for Forest in the end. You know, I really do think that Forest will be pushing up for the playoffs this season, you know, especially compared to how they've done in recent years in the Championship. Lewis Groban, he does always strike me as a little bit of a lazy player. You know, he's certainly not that sort of workhorse up front. Sort of reminds me of a little bit like a Dimitar Berbatov-esque sort of striker, you know, a poacher inside the box, but that's the sort of player who Forest were in need of. You know, they were lacking the goals from a striker last season after they lost Britta Sombolonga, so Lewis Groban will be a top signing for them in my opinion, so he comes in to complete my starting 11. So guys, as you can see on screen now, that is my starting 11 for what have been the best signings so far in this Championship transfer window in my opinion. Let me know down below if you agree with my team or not, and what changes would you make to that team. Also let me know down below, where do you think that team would realistically finish in the Championship this season. But guys, that will now wrap it up for this video. So like I said, make sure you do leave a like if you have enjoyed. Make sure you do subscribe for some Championship content, and also as well, make sure you do get your comments in the comments down below for who have been, in your opinion, the best signings in this transfer window. But like I said guys, that will now wrap it up for this video. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.